Welcome, kind listener. My name is Gentle Fox. You may not know me now, but by the end of this masterpiece, you will, and I trust you'll think of me as an old friend. What you'll be hearing tonight is an excerpt from our Twitch stream. I hope you'll enjoy that extra ambiance and my soft-spoken voice as we explore Leo Tolstoy's classic, Anna Karenina. Chapter 24. Yes, there's something disgusting and repulsive in me, thought Levine, having left the Sherbatskys and making his way on foot to his brother's, and I don't fit in with other people. It's pride, they say. No, there's no pride in me either. If there were any pride in me, I wouldn't have put myself in such a position, and he pictured Vronsky to himself, happy, kind, intelligent, and calm, who certainly had never been in such a terrible position as he had been in that evening. Yes, she was bound to choose him. It had to be so, and I have nothing and no one to complain about. I myself am to blame. What right did I have to think she would want to join her life with mine? Whom am I? And what am I? A worthless man of no use to anyone, or for anything. And he remembered his brother Nikolai, and paused joyfully at this remembrance. Isn't he right that everything in the world is bad and vile, and our judgment of brother Nikolai has hardly been fair? Of course, from Prokofiev's point of view, who saw him drunk and in a ragged fur coat, he is a despicable man, but I know him otherwise. I know his soul, and I know that we resemble each other, and instead of going back to look for him, I went to dinner and then came here. Levine went up to the street lamp, read his brother's address, which he had in his wallet, and hailed a cab. On the long way to his brother's, Levine vividly recalled all the events he knew from the life of his brother Nikolai. He remembered how his brother, while at the university, and for a year after the university, despite the mockery of his friends, had lived like a monk, strictly observing all the rituals of religion, services, fasts, and avoiding all pleasures, especially women. And then it was as if something broke loose in him. He began keeping company with the most vile people, and gave himself up to the most licentious debauchery. Then he remembered the episode with a boy his brother had brought from the country in order to educate him, and to whom he gave such a beating in a fit of anger that proceedings were started against him for the infliction of bodily harm. Then he remembered the episode with a card sharper to whom his brother had lost money, had given a promissory note, and whom he had then lodged a complaint against, claiming that the man had cheated him. It was this money that Sergei Ivanovich had paid. He also remembered how he had spent a night at the police station for disorderly conduct. He remembered a shameful lawsuit he had started against his brother Sergei Ivanovich, whom he accused of not having paid his share of their mother's fortune, and the last case, when he went to serve in the Western Territory and there stood trial for giving his superior a beating. All this was terribly vile, but for Levine it seemed by no means as vile as it might have seemed to those who did not know Nikolai Levine, did not know his whole story, did not know his heart. Levine recalled how during Nikolai's period of piety, fasts, monks, church services, when he had sought help from religion as a bridle for his passionate nature, not only had no one supported him, but everyone, including Levine himself, had laughed at him. They had teased him, calling him Noah and the monk, and when he broke loose, no one helped him, but they all turned away with horror and loathing. Levine felt it in his soul, in the very bottom of his soul, his brother Nikolai, despite the ugliness of his life, was not more in the wrong than those who despised him. He was not to blame for having been born with an irrepressible character and a mind somehow constrained, but he had always wanted to be good. I'll tell him everything. I'll make him tell everything, and I'll show him that I love him, and therefore understand him, Levine decided to himself as he drove up, past 10 o'clock, to the hotel indicated as the address. Upstairs, numbers 12 and 13, the doorman replied to Levine's inquiry. Is he at home? Must be. The door of number 12 was half open, and through it, in a strip of light, came thick smoke from a bad and weak tobacco and the sound of an unfamiliar voice. But Levine knew at once that his brother was there. He heard his little cough. As he walked in, the unfamiliar voice was saying, "It all depends on how reasonably and conscientiously the affair is conducted." Constantine Levine looked through the door and saw that the speaker was a young man with an enormous shock of hair, wearing a quilted jacket, and that a young, slightly pockmarked woman, in a woolen dress without cuffs or collar, was sitting on the sofa. His brother could not be seen. Constantine's heart was painfully wrung at the thought of his brother living among such alien people. No one heard him, and Constantine, taking off his galoshes, was listening to what the gentleman in the quilted jacket was saying. He spoke about some sort of enterprise. "Well, devil take the privileged classes," his brother's voice spoke, coughing. "Masha, get us something for supper and serve some wine, if there's any left, or else send for some." The woman got up, stepped out from behind the partition, and saw Constantine. "Some gentleman's here, Nikolai Dmitrich," she said. "Who does he want?" Nikolai Levine's voice said crossly. "It's me," replied Constantine Levine, stepped into the light. "Me who?" Nikolai's voice repeated, still more crossly. He could be heard quickly getting up, snagging on something, and then Levine saw before him in the doorway the figure of his brother, so familiar and yet so striking in its wildness and sickliness, huge, thin, stoop-shouldered, with big, frightened eyes. He was still thinner than 3 years ago, when Constantine Levine had last seen him. He was wearing a short frock coat. His arms and broad bones seemed still more huge. His hair had become thinner. The same straight mustache hung over his lips. The same eyes gazed strangely and naively at the man coming in. "Ah, Kostya," he said suddenly, recognizing his brother, and his eyes lit up with joy. But in the same second he glanced at the young man and made the convulsive movement with his head and neck that Constantine knew so well, as if his tie were too tight on him, and a quite different, wild, suffering and cruel expression settled on his emaciated face. "I wrote to both you and Sergei Ivanitch that I don't know and don't wish to know you. What do the two of you want?" He was quite different from the way Constantine had imagined him. The most difficult and worst part of his character, that which made communication with him so hard, had been forgotten by Constantine Levine when he thought about him. And now, when he saw his face, especially that convulsive turning of the head, he remembered it all. "I don't want anything from you," he replied timidly. "I simply came to see you." Nikolai was apparently softened by his brother's timidity. He twitched his lips. "Ah, just like that?" he said. "Well, come in, sit down. Want some supper? Masha, bring 3 portions. No, wait. Do you know who this is?" he said to his brother, pointing to the gentleman in the sleeveless jacket. "This is Mr. Kritsky, my friend from way back in Kiev. A very remarkable man. He's being sought by the police, of course, because he's not a scoundrel." And he looked round, as was his habit, at everyone in the room. Seeing the woman standing in the doorway make a movement as if to go, he shouted to her. "Wait, I said. And with that clumsiness in conversation that Constantine knew so well, he again looked around at everybody and began telling his brother Kritsky's story, how he had been expelled from the university for starting Sunday schools and a society to aid poor students, how he had then become a teacher in a people's school, how he had been expelled from there as well, and how later he had been taken to court for something. "You were at Kiev University?" Konstantin Levin said to Kritsky, in order to break the awkward silence that ensued. "Yes, Kiev," Kritsky began crossly, scowling. "And this woman," Nikolai Levin interrupted him, pointing to her, "is my life's companion, Maria Nikolaevna. I took her from a house," and his neck twitched as he said it. "But I love her and respect her, and I ask everyone who wants to know me," he added, raising his voice and frowning, "to love her and respect her. She is the same as my wife, the same. So there you know who you're dealing with, and if you think you're lowering yourself, here's your hat, and there's the door." And again his eyes passed questioningly over them all. "Why should I be lowering myself? I don't understand." "Then tell them to serve supper, Masha. 3 portions, some vodka, and wine. No, wait. No, never mind. Go."